Well, I was actually, I had gotten laid off from a job. The place actually went under, and it was an editing facility. I just got to thinking, I was like, man, you know, how could one survive and not work, and what would they do? And I just kept thinking of, you know, these thieves that would only, thieves with manners that would only steal from people's backyards, and they had principles. And so I thought, okay, the tchotchke thieves. I thought, you know, that's what I would call them. I've written and directed 7. 3 or 4 of them are horror, and then, was it 3 or horror? And then the other 4 are sort of either comedy. I did a drama. I did a sort of tall tale comic book adventure. Well, I won, there's a few. I got, in 2001, I shared an Auteur of the Year award with Mike Oransky. And that was at the Bare Bones Film Festival. And then another one was, another film I did was called The Land of College Prophets, and that won 5 awards at the New York B-Movie Awards. And that was just an awesome night. I did a movie called Everything Moves Alone, and that was a drama. It was a comedic drama. And that, I do like that one. I look at it now, it seems a little dated, but it did open doors for me. That's one of the first films I did where it had a New York City theatrical run, and it did open some doors. But then I did another one called The Land of College Prophets, and that one was an actual, like, critical success where, you know, more reviewers liked it than not, and it ended up being a bestseller for the company. So it's between those two. I do a horror series. It's actually a trilogy right now, but we're going to be doing a 4th one called the Bikini Bloodbath. It's funny when people hear the name, they think the worst of them, but then when they actually go and see them, they realize it's just kind of wacky, you know, scary movie type, you know, dick and fart jokes. I think the comedy I do is actually very quirky, and I think it, in some sense, is broad. Part of it's broad. Dick and fart jokes are great, right? But it's also a little, it's a, you know, a little off the beaten path. I think, you know, it has more in line with like Monty Python than like Judd Apatow. I guess what I mean is that all the comedy isn't generated from those dick and fart jokes. It's more, London Betty is more about sort of a world that I'd like to be in. It's a reality that's a little sweeter, and even the bad guys don't really have teeth so much. They're not so vicious. And you know, the characters are crass and they have rough edges, but ultimately, you know, hopefully the audience still cares about them. So it's all about, you know, for me, is manufacturing these worlds. And we started editing the film, and initially, my character did the narration. I realized that my character was sort of giving away too much of himself, and so I realized I needed an outside narrator, and I wrote this part. And for a year, I searched for narrators. We tried Wallace Shawn, Billy Connolly, Amy Sedaris, Donald Logue, just a ton of narrators, and a few of them actually would have done it. And I came across Clint Howard, and the thing is like, I had met Clint Howard at like the Fangoria convention like 6 years ago. And he's actually a really nice guy, and he's got a really kind voice, actually, which is bizarre because you think of him in these horror films where he's slaughtering people, or you think of him as, you know, like in Apollo 13. You know, he genuinely is a nice guy. He was interested in the project, and it just, when I actually met the guy and we recorded this thing, I realized that he's absolutely the best person who could have done it, because he is sort of like, the narrator's voice is supposed to be sort of like an uncle, like a buddy of yours telling you a story that's going to vouch for the story and kind of bring you into it. And he did really vouch for it in that sense. I mean, he took a chance on it. It works on that level, and that's one of the happiest things I can say about the film is that we got Clint Howard on board. I mean, there's a ton of people. There's Phil Hall, who's very high-profile online film critic. He's written 3 or 4 books. Nicole Lewis, of course, who I said before, is starring in Hair right now. Was played Joanne in Rent. You probably recognize her. Margaret Rose Champagne. She's I call her Maggie. Russ Russo. Rachel Robbins. She's been in a lot of trauma films like Terra Firma, and she's a Playboy model. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember Bruce Campbell talking about that. He said, low-budget filmmakers, they can do what Hollywood does. They can do longer shoots for more money, But Hollywood can't do what indie does. They can't do shorter shoots for less money. What I will say is that, like, in doing these films that I've done, I've learned so much, and it's all hands-on. And I believe that I really know the nuts and bolts of filmmaking. We're sort of in a independent lull, I would say. There was sort of this big independent boom back in the mid-90s, and it's sort of, you had directors like Tarantino, Rodriguez, Kevin Smith, all these giants came out. It's like, when's the last time you heard of a legitimate independent film director star come out? Wes Anderson, or, I mean, you know, the thing is if I can keep continuing to do films, I'm fine with that. So if I'm a Roger Corman or I'm a Lloyd Kaufman, honestly, if I was going to describe film directing, I'd say it's full-time problem solving is what and the low budget, in low budget filmmaking. Because really you're dealing with, I mean, I think on these Hollywood films, a lot of what the money buys is a controlled environment, you know, and time, you know, because that's what's missing from my shoots is time and money.